gonna go.
Okay.
Okay, so welcome again, and thanks for being with us. I will be talking about today on the use of some analytical tools to manage supply chain disruptions. As I told you, I am originally from Colombia, South America, where I worked for 27 years before coming here. My PhD program, I did it on University of South Florida in Tampa. And that was from 1995 to 2000. So in the meantime, I've been doing my work at the university, and I've been an entrepreneur on analytical tools for supply chain management, basically in the transportation industry. And I was applying that. My base was in Colombia, but I had branches in Lima, Peru, in San Jose, Costa Rica, and in San Pedro Sula, Honduras. So with that, having said that, I am just going to talk about not that detailed level I didn't know what the audience was going to be. So I assume there's a mix between people from academia and from industry. So I will try to focus my discussion on the topics and the ideas rather than the very detailed algorithms or whatever that come within the analytical tools. Just to, I think I don't need to introduce what a supply chain disruption is, because every one of us is living with them today. But I'm going to broadly describe it as a breakdown in the flow of goods and services and their delivery to customers. There are many things that we do to manage disruptions. We can manage them once they happen, or we can manage them proactively before they happen, or plan for when those disruptions can happen. I am going to try to analyze some ideas, first at the global trade type of level, and then move down to the local distribution type of problems that we have dealt with. So this just came very recently. The supply chain disruption index is already coming back again up. So you're going to be seeing disruptions, not just the ones that we've lived with for the last 2 years, as one of the attendants recently said, Edward, I think, because of COVID. But we're going to be now seeing more disruptions based on some commodities lagging some of the world trade commodities that we usually have from European countries, or from the current ongoing crisis in Ukraine and Russia. We are going to be receiving some of those problems, and we're already seeing high gas prices in the United States. Now that has many points of view for analyzing, but let me focus first on what we can do for watching the data and following the data, following the paths, and see what's going to happen with some of the commodities, agricultural commodities that now the world depends on. So, as mentioned before, it's always better to work proactively than to react, and to go one step beyond identifying those threats or risks. I think that if you are in the agricultural commodities business, you should have anticipated what's going to happen or what's happening with some of those agricultural products nowadays. Wheat, corn, sunflower oil, even some rare earth materials, some metals, precious metals, are going to be disrupted at the world scale nowadays. So if you are in that business and you knew that there were talks since 2014 about some movements that could disrupt the way things are in Eastern Europe, you should have planned for what is happening right now. So diversifying your supplier base, or even raising locally, or doing something different that you could work on before the actual let's say, scenario that we're seeing currently in the Russia-Ukraine issue, it's taking place. Some of those ideas, one is gain sub-tier visibility into your supply network. And with what I want to mean with that is if you're able to go beyond the current track of visibility that you have or the control that you already have, you can actually cooperate with your partners or cooperate with your customers or cooperate with your suppliers to get to know better the things that are happening to them. And you do this on a daily basis, not every year or so. So you try to understand what's going on with your supply chain, your suppliers, the suppliers of your suppliers, so that you don't get affected all of the sudden. The second thing is you re-examine supplier locations and viability. By viability, I mean that you take care not only of where they are right now, but also where they could be located, and even if that location is managed by yourself. I told you, use active monitoring, evaluate the required levels of materials and labor in the short and mid-term in all of the levels and tiers of your supply chain. Discuss business continuity plans, and this is something that you need to work on at the management level, and prepare to switch or qualify alternative sources for essential products and services. This last one is just right on the verge of a disruption, or even when disruption has happened already. So since I am going to focus on analytical tools, I am also inducing my talk into the use and secure use of technology to step up resilience. In this case, I am trying to, or I'm going to focus in the use of information systems for facilitating some of the decisions that we made today in our complex world in terms of supply chains. Those information systems nowadays are not just software. Those information systems are many more things that we can deal with. You nowadays have a lot of sensor information that you can gather in real time. You can have, you can use cloud computing. You can use many cybersecurity tools. Blockchain is one of them. It was spoken last in our last ASCM talk. We use now a lot of machine learning tools, not just for predicting what could happen, but also for optimizing and finding policies for what we could do in reaction or in proactively doing some of the work that we need to do. In addition to what we usually have been doing for some years now, which is optimization of large-scale systems, geospatial analytics for finding where the demand is, how the product is moving, how our cost to serve is following. Are we landing profit or are we leaking profit? Those kind of things, we have been doing it for quite some time now. And that is what we have to enhance and learn a little bit more of from this point onwards. So some of the areas in which analytical tools have helped companies, the most common area that you're going to hear all the time is demand.
My
Hold on.
first.
Yes? There's somebody with the microphone on, I'm sorry. One of the areas that we have been focusing a lot is demand management. And well, yes, we now have very powerful tools that could go to the minute in trying to forecast what's going to happen the next day. But yeah, that's one area. But we have learned how to manage, how to automate and manage and learn automated policies for inventory management that are dynamically changing in time, depending on whatever happens in the system and the context. We have been using analytical tools to get suppliers to work with us in a better way. We have scheduled operations for all of the areas that we work on: routing, production scheduling, maintenance scheduling, all of those things. We have done that before. So using mathematical modeling. So the thing is that we more intelligent information, we can still do those mathematical models, but we can feed the models with better insights from the data that we can get. So I am going to just study a couple of issues. One is of common knowledge for all of us, and that's what's happening on global trade. I am going to focus on one commodity, which is sunflower oil, and I am going to talk about that, how that commodity could or would affect mainly the European community, not just the US. For what I've been following with my students, by the way, with a group of students, this is not really a big issue for the United States for that commodity, but it is so for some of the European community countries, and for the UK as well. And I will explain a case study that I ran with my former company on local distribution, on last mile distribution, amid the crisis of COVID-19 on the drivers, on the trucking industry. So the first one is, let's just get something that is on the news every single day nowadays, which is the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Some of the global risks that we should watch now, the one on top that is on the dashboards and on every risk management company that is in the network, it's the possible Russia-NATO conflict, not just the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So we are now in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, but should this thing escalate, we are going to see larger disruptions in the future. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but that's something that is in the radar right now. Now, what happens with each disruption that at the global level is that it will always affect the local level. For instance, as we spoke, the three that I have on the top are the high risk global, high level global risks to watch at the moment. The second one is global technology decoupling. And this has been going on since 2015 or even before that time. China-US relationships have changed. There's a strategic competition now that comes with that technology decoupling level. We will be seeing some more disruptions, for instance, on the semiconductors industry and some on the medical supplies industry. There's one of the people from the audience is right from the pharmaceutical industry. So we're going to be seeing more disruptions at that level. But one of them is the cyber attacks. And I actually participated in the last discussion and analyzed with the last speaker that a month ago, we found out that the largest container terminal in India was hit by a cyber attack. And it took 48 hours or more to recuperate from that attack. And then the queues of the lanes of trucks, lorries were just piling up before the entrance of the port, and no container could be moved at the time. So that's a real thing. And it's good that that talk came before mine because I can now focus on different examples, except that cyber attacks is actually a big deal nowadays. There's a lot of people talking about post-pandemic world, and there's a lot of people saying that that COVID is on our back right now. I can tell you that just 2 days ago, China shut down the third largest port due to its zero COVID policy. So the third largest container port in China is going to be shut down for a week, and that will increase what we're having in our things moving on along the way for analyzing disruptions at the global level. So let me talk about what's going on or what we have been following with the group of students that I'm tutoring right now. So on the right-hand side, you are seeing a report released just today by UNCTAD on how the world actually is curbing food supplies and is lifting prices. So you are going to understand, we need to understand that Russia and Ukraine are the largest producers of many commodities at the agricultural level. One of those is wheat, Almost 30% of the wheat exports in the world come from those two countries. Now, one country is being banned. The other country is most likely going to have more disruptions. And with that comes is that, yes, maybe one of the countries could make arrangements to reposition their supplies to, let's say, China and possibly India. But then the other country, if allowed to take out the products from its fields, well, that would be the best thing that could happen. But if it doesn't happen, we're going to see a lot of shortages for wheat, and then your bread is not going to come to table in many countries in the world, as it typically is right now, if we don't do anything about it. So 19% of corn supplies and almost 80% of world sunflower oil exports, those two countries itself. So there's an argument on the numbers. Many of the information that you can source come from trade databases, but the numbers range from 60 to 80% depending on the database that you use. Now, even further, if we're talking about food supply security, Ukraine is a major global producer also of fertilizers, and now there's a ban for exports of fertilizers after the ongoing thing. So what countries are highly dependent on those two countries for the export? For what countries are importing the most? Well, Turkey, China, Egypt, India, Netherlands, and some of the European Union countries are the largest importers of their products. So it's not only that the largest countries, importers countries in the world are going to have problems with it. The poor countries in the world are going to have a lot of recession in this sense. So just to let you know what happens at the impact of this war in terms of transportation. So first of all, the image that you see on top is the railroad network from Asia to Europe. That is going to be disrupted if it is not right now. So what that comes, what happens with that is that we're going now to watch some of the goods that were transported via roads or via rail are going to have to be transported via maritime vessels, and we already had congestions in many ports in the world. So with this in hand, what we're going to see is a larger congestions, larger prices, and larger complications to deliver the goods to wherever they have to go. Not talking about the fuel cost or anything like that, but those impact as well. One of the issues on transportation as well is that 3 of the world's largest container shipping companies say that are temporarily suspending all non-essential deliveries to Russia. Those are Maersk, MSC, and CMA CGM as of March 1. So that is not just going to affect the movement of goods from Russia or to Russia, but everything else that has to be repositioned is going to congest other routes as well. Okay. So the impact, not on transportation, but on price for sunflower oil. This comes from the International Monetary Fund, by the way. It was trending down already. It was trending down from COVID. So what you see here highlighted is the COVID trend. So we were having good numbers in terms of the commodity price for many years now. So the latest peak that we saw there was the 2009 crisis, 2010 crisis. But we were seeing after COVID a little bit of recovery or coming down in the price. And now we're already watching the price to go up again. So let's talk a little bit of how that works. The 2 countries that you see in higher color or darker color are Russia and Ukraine, and those are the exports that the different countries, the top producers in the world, give. You can actually, I will share this set of slides with you, and you can just move down through the map and see exactly the numbers that each country is producing and exporting at the moment. And the trend is coming up. So what we see here, when we see the data year by year, is that we've been increasing production since 2015, 2016 to the level that we already have. And this was the projected, on the right-hand side, this is the projected line for 2022. We're no longer going to have that as it is, and that may come with different possibilities or potential scenarios that we can analyze later on. On the other hand, we have the importers. So the largest importers that you're going to see are the darker economies. India is the largest one in the world. So and what happens is, well, European Union is the most affected one. Even if China and India are large importers, the effect, the negative effect that we're going to have with this war is not going to be for China. China already have in place agreements with Russia for the supply of sunflower oil. But instead of that, other countries are going to be suffering the shortage of Ukraine sunflower oil. And those are going to be European countries, mainly UK, European Union, and Turkey as well. Turkey is also a producer, but it's a large importer itself. So let's think about what could happen when we work on the different scenarios that we can have. I'm just going to talk about 3 of them. The fourth one is we have a worst case scenario, and that is the conflict escalates. We don't want to see that, and we don't know yet what's going to happen if that comes to place. So let's talk about the first one. Let's see what if the conflict ends quickly and normal production and exports activities could resume. There is already a lack of match between demand and supply. So the yellow line is the trend for supplies for all the production that the world is able to accommodate. The orange one is the demand. So we are already having shortage of production without the war. So if everything comes back to normal, then we will need to be still looking for some alternative sources, either from sunflower or from some other oil. We have made a survey understanding that the most likely oil to supply all the needs that sunflower oil has is the palm oil industry in the world. The second scenario would be, if we have a year-long conflict with recovery period up to 2025, and that's an assumption. So what would happen there is we're taking down the production from Ukraine. So assuming that the production from Russia could go to China and they could continue deliver the delivery of those crops to or oil to China, then this is what's going to happen. We're going to have a deep decrease in 2022, 2023, and we will start recuperating that output 1 year later. So that will be towards half 2023, May, June to 2023, and onwards. So if we're going to have a deficit, a shortage of products before the disruption happened, we are now, if this scenario takes place, going to happen more disruptions there. So the third one would be definitely there's a larger conflict. Let's not say that it escalates to other nations. Let's just say that it will be a larger country. So over there, then you just need to reconfigure the global consumable oil supply chain. Actually, in all scenarios, we need to do so. But how you do it is you need to look for 2 different sources of that product. One is the increased urgency for alternate sunflower oil sources and the countries that we have learned to work with. And for this, we're using network location analysis or supply analysis with Argentina, Turkey, Northern African producers, and South Africa for increased planting. European Union currently, to the day, has a 4 to 6 week supply of sunflower oil. So that's the inventory that they are carrying at the moment. So if you think about it, they are the ones that are going to be more worried about this shortage in sunflower. Some of the alternative oils that we can think of is soybean, and the US is a large producer of it. Brazil and Argentina are as well. Rapeseed or canola oil from Canada, which is one of the largest producers in the world. That's a big player in this new possible or potential scenario. And the palm oil industry. Indonesia and Malaysia are the largest producers in the world. And the next two largest producers are Brazil, Colombia, and some of the countries all on the equator line. So the reason why I'm not including Brazil and Colombia is because almost 85% of the production of palm oil in those two countries are solely dedicated to the production of biofuels. So no, they're not in the regular commodity type of edible oil industry, although it is used for the local consumption as well. So how do you do this reconfiguring? So when we analyze the different countries that could provide this alternative oil sources, some of the countries that could increase production and planting specifically are Argentina, Turkey, and France, due to location analysis and capacity analysis. While additional planting is done, some of the current demands should be stocked with different oils. And US is the most likely supplier of soybean oil, and palm oil is definitely going to come from Indonesia, Malaysia, and South America if we have more production. So how can companies respond to this supply chain disruption? One way is you react to the disruption. Disruption leads to the lack of raw materials and sometimes possible closure of facilities. And by facilities, I mean manufacturing or warehouses. I'm just changing from what happens at the global level to what would happen in a local network, in a distribution network. So definitely, how do you use your analytical tools there is you automatically and dynamically revise and reoptimize the supplier options, the production options, the logistic network, and the inventory plans. And that is done with a combination of prediction tools and optimization tools. A proactive approach to tackle down that disruption is, well, you can use traditional statistics techniques. And I'm already saying that machine learning tools are traditional techniques. We are on the common use of deep learning tools now to forecast. And nowadays we have proven a lot that deep learning and some other machine learning tools are doing a lot better work than some of the statistical packages that we used to have before, like time series analysis or something like that. But then when you do this, you build models that assess and predict supply chain risks and raw material unavailability. So if you are able to predict when that's going to happen, it's like if you were able to predict when you're going to have a shortage of drivers in the next problem that I will have, or when you're going to have a shortage of agricultural workers because of COVID or because of there's a strike that you are anticipating, but you don't know when that's going to happen. Well, you can build models that assess and predict the risk, and with that risk, you can feed that information into the network optimization models, which then in turn can recommend optimal decisions to reorient the network. Now, since risk management is also scenario management, you are going to try to define possible or potential outputs or outcomes for many different scenarios that you can have when you do your planning level. And run different optimization models that will run at the what if type of analysis. Let me explain that with an example that I ran in my local city of Barranquilla in Colombia. And this is a case study for last mile distribution disruptions. This came in the verge of COVID-19. The trucking industry was declared to be essential to the economy, but COVID in the country was declared to be a labor hazard. With that comes that companies become liable for whatever happens to a worker that gets sick during the work operation. And you never know, and you cannot prove seriously, you cannot prove where you got infected. You can speculate where you did, but you cannot actually guarantee where the infection took place. So this means that all companies are going to be liable in this case to whatever happens to a driver in the case of the transportation company of this case study. And since you're going to be liable, you have to work around that. So I'm going to show what we were doing using analytics before and after the pandemic started. So before it started, we were still using analytical tools and machine learning tools to run a problem. And I know that there are academicians in the audience. So the problem is called prescriptive inventory routing problem. And that's in the literature. I have written a couple of papers on it, which I am more than willing to share with you. But basically what we did there is we applied some machine learning tools to predict the moment at which retailers are going to ask for more materials. And then before the actual purchasing order comes, we were able to anticipate that and act proactively to do the routing of the inventory at that level. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. And if there are more questions after, since I'm talking on a broad case type of study, if there are questions about it, I can detail more on the algorithms and things that we ran there. The second part of it is that the disruption came. And this is a kind of disruption that nobody understands when it's going to happen. It's just, and I have heard that this is not going to be the last pandemic that we are going to run through. So what this means is that there should be a way that we prepare ourselves for when this kind of things happen in the future. And we should have been doing this way a long time ago. So what we're doing here is we're faced with a scenario in which a distributor with filial ties to the largest or one of the largest cement manufacturing companies in the country had several issues to consider. The orders that they were receiving from hardware stores were reactive, fragmented, and geographically, but, and this is good, predictable, dispersed. So we can, that's one big word there, they're predictable. So we can run some analytical tools to predict the behavior of the demand and then work with it. Currently, the distribution of two of the main product families, and in this case were cement from one company and bolts and nuts or steel products from another company, are served independently and from very close geographical locations. So both companies were supplying to the same hardware stores the same day those two materials. And many times, the distribution of each one of them were using less than truckload operations, and those less than truckloads were 20, 25, 30% of usage of the truck. And that's really a waste of space and a waste of transportation resources. The customer of these two suppliers are most of the time the same man on the same day, and the distributor, and this is the reason why they called us, they were about to lose part of the business because its distribution costs were a big concern. So what we did there is we learned what we call VMI policies, or vendor managed inventory policies. So we took the control of the inventory from the retailers and brought it back to the distributor, not to the companies, not to the main two companies that are the cargo generators, but to the distributor itself. So they were not only providing the distribution, the transportation of goods, but they were also managing the demand at that time and balancing the demand with the supply. So our question was that or the main goal is that it is really possible to learn inventory policies that make use of the better geographical approaches to manage jointly the demand at customers in ways that a purchasing order might be learned before it happens. And the answer to that is yes, you can do that in a very efficient way. So you can use, in this case, we use reinforcement learning and neural networks to, well, the neural networks were to approximate the values, and the reinforcement learning was to learn the policy for finding the best inventory level for each one of the SKUs that we were talking about, which were the two main areas of the one of those two areas of the distribution. And second, it is possible to generate routing solutions that manage those inventory levels at customers in ways that you don't dispatch only one lump dispatch, but rather solve questions such as, can we anticipate the dispatch? That means if the dispatch is required on, let's say, March 22nd, can we do it on March 21 or March 20? Because we're taking advantage of some of the routing that has to be done those days in a proactive way. Or can we delay the dispatch? Or can we fragment the dispatch? Or can we put collaborative strategies in place? So the answer to the questions is we can do all of those. And the learned inventory policy jointly with the learned distribution policy or the release policy. I prefer to call it release policy because sometimes it's not just the dispatching, it's when you do the release of that dispatch. Those can be done jointly, and they can work actually in a very interesting way. So just to move ahead, well, for routing, there are many tools. You can actually nowadays, there are free tools in Google if you want to use them for doing routing. Now, if you want to put specific problems to the routing algorithms, then you need to somehow enhance the capabilities of your routing technologies. This is a couple of images from the tools that we left for that company for routing. And one of the big issues is that we were able to even include congestion in the network. We were able to include those inventory policies to be managed. We were able to include collaboration strategies, and we were able to include restriction strategies. That is, if you are distributing your product and you don't want your product to be mixed with another supply from a different company, then you put that into the constraints of the problem. So it is in the theoretical framework, it is a rich vehicle problem, a vehicle routing problem. And what we want to call it is that we use geo-prescriptive analytics, analytical tools to work on that. What you're seeing here is an example, the one that I can release, for instance, and it is an example for 6 of those 50 plus retail stores, hardware stores that we were serving with the vehicles at this company. And the blue line is the total actual cost before the study was running. The yellow line is the total cost to be, and the gray bar is the savings in each one of them. So it's good to show what I'm showing here. I took this example and I did it on purpose to show you that the global output is a priority instead of the local output. That means I'm not doing local optimization for each one of the retail distributions. I am doing global optimization for the whole problem. Now, that may come with a problem or with an issue. And that is what is shown here for retailer number 6. It's that you take a bullet for the whole chain. That's the concept. But then the retailer most likely is not going to like that. So you have to, you not only optimize the full network, but you also have to delve deeper into whatever errors you have. And by errors, I mean, you're still going to have some sacrifices to do in your supply network that you have to work on a more deep basis. So there are more tools. And what we did there for that specific retailer is we use cost to serve analytics to analyze not only the transportation cost, but a joint integral cost of ordering, transporting, logging, inventory, back ordering, and many more things that we could do. So, at the very end, we were able to at least not have losses from this retailer. I wanted to show you this example because this is typically what happens when you run an optimal, a global optimization problem in a supply chain. But this work was done before COVID hit the economy. And in Colombia, COVID was declared to enter the country in March of 2020, I believe. I think so, March of 2020. And then the first vaccine applied in the country was given at the end of February of 2021. So nowadays, the country has a very great rate of vaccination. It's over 80% already. But at the very beginning, it was very scarce. And then what happened is, since the trucking industry was considered to be an essential industry, they never stopped. And since they never stopped, there was an immediate reaction at the transportation companies when the government declared the pandemic or the COVID illness, not the infection, the illness. It became a labor-related condition. That means that the companies have to take care of that. And in our country, in Colombia, my native country, it's not like in other countries in the world, in which there, if you get sick, you have to get paid by the Social Security. So there are some countries in which you don't get paid except for so many days that you negotiate with the company. So in Colombia, if you stay 3 months out of the job, then the Social Security has to pay that jointly with the company. So that's a liability and that's a cost. Absenteeism is a cost. The death of a driver would be a cost. And there are some other externalities that you can think of out of that. So what the companies did, and I know that I'm running a little bit out of time now, the companies did was there was an immediate reaction to, it was said that the COVID infection, it was stronger on people with older age. And then the immediate reaction is, I'm not hiring on-demand drivers. That means spot, beat action type of hiring for drivers that are over the age of 55. And I'm going to tell you what happened there. Almost 53% of the population of drivers in my country are over the age of 55. And 81% of the total drivers population is an on-demand type of driver. That means they are not hired by a specific transportation company to be under the payroll. They work for all of them on a spot basis, typically under freight brokering systems. So they, at the beginning, they started to do, what every company does when there's a disruption. You send people on vacation, you send people on paid leaves. But ultimately, they needed to start sending people on unpaid leaves with the permission of the government because the pandemic was getting stronger. Even so, drivers were still getting ill, and some had to be hospitalized, and there were casualties too. Their families were becoming infected and ill too, and the social consequences of putting older drivers aside were humongous for both, for the economics point of view of the companies, because now there is a real shortage of drivers. See, Colombia has the opposite problem like the US. The US has a permanent shortage of drivers. In Colombia, there are a surplus of drivers, actually, by the way. But now that you have run out 53% of that population out of the on-spot demand business, then the shortage of driver problem became reality. That's the first disruption that you're going to have there. Well, the first one was the pandemic being hit. So that was a disruption for the companies. But then again, 53% of the population in a total of 300,000 plus drivers that we have in Colombia were not getting a job. And that was for as long as 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 months, some of them. And they were the household, the primary household maintainer. So what we derive is we built a framework for working with the government and with the companies. In this case, we had 3 different sources for database. And the first data source is the data source for the pandemic itself, for the infection. And hold on. And that we had the luck that our city was one of the cities in the country that was spotting every single infection by geolocation. So it was possible for us to actually follow the trend of the pandemic spot by spot in the city. And then we were able to find the common hotspots day by day. So we didn't have to run long-term predictions. That was not our goal. Our goal was to run short-term predictions of how the pandemic was going to run. We used for that, for those that are analytical savvy, we tested data with support vector machines, with random forest, with artificial neural networks, and then at the very end, we use deep neural networks or deep reinforcement learning to understand better the problem. So there's a link for the platform that was done in ArcGIS to following the behavior of the pandemic. Second, we partnered with the hospital, one of the largest hospitals in the city, to understand how the illness was taking place. So we inducted, and this is another analytical tool that we use. We use induction of decision trees to find out what is the ratio that we will turn into probabilities or risks for infection, that we will turn into probabilities of risk for getting ill, and then for getting mildly ill, for getting moderate illness, for getting severe illness, critical illness, and then fatality. So all those probabilities, all those risks were analyzed using decision tree induction. And then with that information and the one before, we asked, actually the companies asked all of the drivers to input the data in the database, to input all of their comorbidities, to input all, not just the age, that was known already, that was the main reason why they were cut off or lay off at the beginning. But they had to now input in the platform, which is the app, or the freight broking app that we enhance in capabilities. They had to input every single comorbidity that they had. And with that comes, if you have diabetes and what level you have it, how many times, how many years, are you insulin dependent, etc. Are you hypertense? What is the dose that you're using for your hypertense pill? Are you immunocompromised? Do you have AIDS? And this is actually serious information. I mean, this is really confidential information. But it was necessary so that the company would hire again this person. You can imagine that this there was not a problem for the drivers, because they were not going to be hired if they were not going to input that information into the database. Then with that database, what we ran is we pruned the decision tree that you saw here. We inputted that decision tree into the platform for the drivers, and we pruned every geofence that we did to call drivers on the spot or an on-demand job. We pruned it based on how the city was having a hotspot day by day. That means if I'm going to route 53 different errands today, then I'm going to see where they are geolocated, and I'm going to compare the risk of infection on those different 53 locations, and I will match that risk of infection with the probability for one of the drivers having a comorbidity of getting severely ill. That was the main idea of the work. What that accomplished is that now we were able to send younger, healthier drivers to the hotspots, and more compromised, more health compromised people to the very low risk areas, or at the moments in which the pandemic was so high, there were people over the age of 55 that we would send home. And that was a hard decision to make, but it was a decision nonetheless that we had to do. So before we run this in real life, we simulated with all the risks and all the analysis, and we were able to take down the cost, the socioeconomical costs for the community of drivers and for the company to almost zero, if that matters by something. So we drastically reduce the probability of getting hospitalized or die. And now let me tell you a little bit of what you're seeing there. The right-hand side is the curve of infection for the country. So and the last one is Omicron. And for many countries in the world, if not almost everyone, Omicron was like twice as big as Delta. The previous to last one peak is Delta. Now, in our case, Delta was so huge that it made a lot of people, in combination with the vaccination rate and all that, kind of less affected by an infection for Omicron. So what you're seeing here is that Omicron is actually less important in terms of the number of infections as it is, for instance, in the United States. Now, I came to the US in August 2021, and I went live with this case study from April 2021 to just before I came here. There were no deaths in that period for the truck drivers population that we analyzed, which were 534 drivers. There were a total of 52 absenteeism days for just 7 drivers who got infected during that period. And April 21 to August 21 was actually in the middle of the largest Delta peak that we had, or the largest infection wave that we had in the country. And there were no hospitalization reported for the drivers nor the families during that time. Well, we had no control of what happened in the families, but we had control of what happened with the drivers there. So I'm going to end up my presentation just telling you that disruptions are here to stay. So the role to work around those disruptions is to build smarter and more resilient supply chains, centered in what I'm trying to make up is the build of cybersecure information systems upon analytical frameworks. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourselves.
Or through the chat, whatever.
Or chat, yeah, chat
comfortable.
if you want to do that. Everyone's very quiet.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Carlos.
Hello, Irina.
First of all, thank you so much. Great presentation. I really appreciate this topic and your focus in this topic, not only on the threats and mitigation of risk and so on, but the application of analytics in solving this problem. So my question is this: from the practical perspective of people, practitioners in the industry, do you think they use enough of analytical tools? Like you gave the example of the decision tree, which is my favorite. I use it even in my personal life, you know, not only in business. But do you think that companies like transportation companies or freight forwarding companies, do they really apply a lot of analytical tools and data in their day-to-day operations? And if so, maybe you can give us some examples of that.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. And yes, I would say that probably my answer would go into two directions. The first one would be you can never be sure that you're using analytics enough. So there is always an analytical solution for any managerial problem that you can think of. I mean, think about suppliers, selection of suppliers, and then you can run decision trees, you can run optimization models, you can run stochastic programming models to find out what would be the least risky operation and how do you build up resilience with your suppliers. But to answer the question fairly, I have been seeing analytical tools used in the transportation industry in at least 7 companies that I have contacted in just this last year that I've been hearing in the United States. Mainly, they're using optimization. They're not. What I'm trying to build now is try to enhance the optimization framework with more smarter information. So typically what you find from these companies is, let's say you're running an optimization software for building routes. What if during the routing problem, you consider also that there is a probability that the recipient of the cargo could not receive during a time window, a specific time window. So what you do is, if you run this with a large set of data, if you run this for a longer period of time, then you are actually going to take advantage of knowledge that the drivers are going to feed to a database, mentioning what are the likeliness of a customer to actually fulfill the time window that they told you to get there to. And with that, you can actually improve the probability of not going twice or more than twice, or at least more than once to that customer to deliver the cargo. I don't know if you're following me with the discussion, but the possibilities are endless if you are able to grab data. And the good thing about data is that most of the companies have it, they just don't use it. They use it just for as I told you before, I've seen many routing software on the practitioner side. Let me talk to you about a different example. Nowadays, you can halt operations at a port if you are not compliant with EPA regulations for air pollution. That's one issue that we are going to be seeing now more often because the ports are getting more congested, and almost 60% of the pollution that you get in ports are due to the vessel side. And if the port is congested, then the vessels are going to line up and there's going to be more emissions there. So there's going to be a cycle on, do I evacuate the port faster? And if I evacuate it faster, then there's going to be more emissions because the ports are already congested. With this, what I'm saying is you can actually schedule better the sequence of service to the shipping lines if you understand what the automated identification system that the vessel has is giving you on information. What kind of emissions are they sending out to the environment, to the water, to the air, in terms of many different pollutants that you can measure. And with that, you can balance. You can schedule your sequence of services, balancing the level of emissions that you have so that during your optimization process, you don't get out of control on balancing those emissions. Also, the use of electric equipment in the ports ranges from one of the main problems of going fully electric is autonomy, the range of autonomy for the equipment. So you still have to have a mix of the different equipments, or you have to improve the level of the regime of autonomy for the batteries of those equipment. If you are in the first side, then you still need to do sequencing of usage. Sometimes you need to balance that with the diesel operation because the electrical units are no longer able to fulfill all the capacity that is required. So those are examples that I've seen. So yes, there are analytical tools in the industry. And I have seen, for instance, Amazon has done a lot of good work. Have a very good friend that used to run, he used to be the director for last mile delivery. Then he moved into net zero carbon. And he's also from my native city in Colombia originally. And he was telling me, well, we decided to use the Port of Houston because the data told us that the congestion in the ports of LA and Long Beach were going to get us out of business sometimes. So that's the use of analytical tools, telling you not just how you optimize and reroute or ship the trade routes that you need to work on, but that is also telling you that because of the congestion, you're now less likely to obtain the goods that you need at the time that you need it. Amanda was reminding us before that our previous speaker mentioned that his daughter worked for a company that was expecting a delivery of Christmas tree for last year, and then it's been sitting there for about a year now. Just because they were not able to get it out on time, and then most likely they're not going to use it anymore.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you so much, Carlos. Appreciate your answer very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina.
If anyone's thinking of questions, I'll just say thank you again to Carlos, giving us head up on the current problems and the ones to come, which sound a bit scary to me. Oh, Irina's got another question. Do you want to ask something else, Irina?
No, I'm applauding.
That was a clap.
Yeah, it's a clap.
Yes.
I'm just very impressed and thank Carlos for his wonderful presentation.
Yes, no, it's a fantastic presentation. Very interesting indeed.
Irina, just if you feel if you want to reach out, just write me an email, and I am more than willing to share.
Oh, thank you. I was just thinking that would be so wonderful, maybe to join our forces and do something, a joint event for our students. and
And
for the
thank you.
organization.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you, Amanda. We'll be in touch. And thank you, Carlos.
Mhm.
No problem. Yeah, no, thank you for the great presentation. I think everyone's been gained a lot of information from that. I wanted to say as well, we're trying to do like a couple of presentations every month. We've got one kind of this coming up. We've got an in-person event that I'm still organising, but I'll be on April the 20th. So if anyone wants to hold that date, it's probably going to be in a brewery somewhere, and it'll just be general networking in person. So
Oh, nice.
people will come to that. Yeah, we're trying to actually get that organised. I think people are ready to be getting together again now, so hopefully that will go well. And we've got a webinar coming up on April 25th, which is the reality of supply chain risks. So that should be interesting too. And then we've also got on April the 12th, a 6-week back to basics class. And actually I'll put the link into the chat so that you can have a look at everything that's coming up basically. And if people want, well, you can just go to events on the right-hand side, and then you'll see what other classes and things we have coming up. We've got most of them are coming up in the summer and then fall as well. If anyone's got any other questions for Carlos, we can.
Yep. If you want to stay a little bit after everybody leaves, Amanda, I have a question for you different to the presentation that I want to.
Okay. All right then. Does anyone else have any questions for Carlos or for me?
Yeah, hi, this is Edward. Thank you for the presentation. Is very insightful. My question really was around other segments, and if you happen to have any other things that you foresee changing with the trucking industry as far as shortages go for the United States.
There are many things that could come there. I was told, I was doing some research on the number of licenses, driver's license for truckers that are being emitted these days in California. And it so seems that the problem is not the number of drivers that are capable of running trucks. It's just the number of people that is willing to stay as truckers after 2 to 3 years working in the industry. So attrition is a problem that we need to think about in that industry. If you are you on? You're in the pharmaceutical, right?
Yeah, most of the legs are definitely in Midwest and West.
Okay, so yes, I mean the one way they're trying to address the problem of shortage of drivers is doing a lot of more interesting work in autonomous vehicles. I'm not sure that's going to be here soon. I mean, for commercial large-scale implementation, I know that again, Amazon is building up a network of autonomous vehicles for delivery, but nobody knows still where they are going to deploy it first. So we don't know if that's going to be Seattle or California or New York City or whatever. Third is that the tools are there. So many of the problems that we foresee with the trucking industry is empty travels. Are you having those issues, Edward?
Yeah, we've seen an increase in deadhead. It's mostly for risk mitigation, but
right.
And one of the things I was wondering about is when you're running the analytics, if you see common lanes that are possibly shared with people in the same segments. We haven't seen, you're just wondering if there's an opportunity to realize that
there is a lot of opportunity. There are a lot of opportunities there, and I actually ran a freight imbalance study with a colleague of mine. He used to be my graduate student. He works at UC at Davis, and we do have some information on that coming on a paper, and we do have data that could support that analysis. So if you would like to write me an email, I think I can share.
Definitely be interested. Thank you.
Yeah, and then we can share not only the insights and the work that we've done, but also the tools that we're using for analyzing that. Because basically what you do is you have to keep track. There's something coming on that was announced this week too. The port of LA just announced the interconnectivity system, the IT system, that will make visible every single truck that works with them. So that means visible means that you're going to know what the cargo manifest that they're handling, and you are going to track in on a real-time basis. So that's great, because you're going to have real-time visibility of whatever is available for you to, on call. And now the thing is that not all drivers work on the same freight brokering systems, but typically the ones that work for the ports, now they're going to be interconnected. So there's going to be like one big framework in which you are going to be able to, understand the flows of goods coming in and out and through the ports or between the cities in California.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Send me an email and I can connect with you and talk to you about it. Okay.
Oh, definitely. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
If there aren't any more questions, we could wind up early if no one else has any more questions. So Carlos? Maybe not. A quick question. Do you see that? Do you think that we will see disruptions in air travel due to the conflict that is happening in Eastern Europe / Russia and the oil sourcing?
Well, oil, Brenda, thank you for the question. Is that, are you talking about oil and gas, petroleum type or base type of oil or sourcing, or are you talking about the commodities such as the one that I mentioned, sunflower oil, or? That's a question that I need you to elaborate a little bit more on. But second, gas, okay. Well, there are many things that could happen. Like, for instance, 2 days ago, Russia nationalized a lot of airplanes that were based in Russia. So they're no longer the property of the righteous property owners, is now the property of the government of Russia. So that is going to be an issue. Now, those airplanes are there for the use of Russia, not for the use of the world. And those are like over 800 units right there. Air travel is banned from Russia for several countries in the world. But that doesn't necessarily have to do much with gas. What comes with gas is a price increase. The gas problem will give you a price increase. Now, it is interesting to know that while the international price of oil per barrel is already below the $100, we're still seeing rises in prices for gas at our gas stations here in California and in all of the United States. So it's not just a matter of the international price. It's also how you price it. It's, how there's speculation on the air, that's for sure. And there's a good analysis that a colleague of mine from the Center of Supply Chain Management in the University of South Florida did on the reasons why the gas price is still going up while the international price is coming down. And who is the U.S. government trying to make a deal with to get more oil, just because we're not getting any oil from Russia, oil and gas from there. So for ships, if you talk on the other hand on shipments that are done through air, well, I don't anticipate. Well, the rare earth materials, the precious metals that were mined in Ukraine are not coming out of Ukraine right now, and that is, palladium, platinum. Some of those materials are used for semiconductors manufacturing. So I imagine that a great deal of this war is because of everything that Ukraine has in the soil. So maybe those are the ones that are going to be disrupted and not getting out of Ukraine towards the world. But I don't think that besides that, you cannot move freely in Europe at the moment. There could be some increases in prices. Maybe people don't want to travel somehow, and then the demand comes down. And if the demand comes down, then more planes are going to be landed, and then the price is going to go up, or after a while, it's going to settle down and bounce back, as we did after COVID. So. Okay. You're welcome.
Okay, if there's no more questions, then I think we'll say thank you again, Carlos, for doing this. That was great, and such notice as well. So that's great. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you
Okay,
to everyone for coming.
So yeah.
I'm gonna
Okay,
stop.
so the